Well, good evening, participants. Good evening, colleagues. We are here to assess the thesis defense of Coronel and Lujan Recalde. Um, and you have like half an hour to develop your presentation, and then we'll ask you to leave the room for a while and while we deliberate, and then we'll ask you back again to give you the verdict. Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah,
That should be
No
all.
problem.
it sounds good.
All right, we're missing Christian here for the formal presentations.
Mm-hmm.
So you can start whenever you want, whenever you're ready. Yeah.
Okay. We'll be sharing the screen. Mm, there we are.
Okay, so good evening. Uh, Thanks to the members of the examining committee for being here. This is Lujan Recalde.
This is Joel Coronel Ovelar.
This is our presentation for a thesis dissertation. The title is An Analysis of the Translation Techniques Applied by Netflix to Translate Guaraní, Slang, and Jopará Languages for the English Subtitles of the Paraguayan Movie Leal. So these are the aspects that we want to cover during this presentation. As you can see, we have 13 items.
So, first of all, we want to start introducing the topic by saying that audiovisual translation is probably the main tool for filmmaking industry to bridge the gap between linguistic limitations and global viewers' engagement. Subtitling, specifically speaking, keeps a balance between these two aspects, allowing diverse audiences to comprehend and appreciate what is said in a film, and also assisting viewers to enjoy the film in all its original nuances. For instance, this is the case of the Paraguayan movie Leal, Hay una sola manera de vivir. The subtitles of this movie allow the viewers to appreciate the richness and dynamics of the Paraguayan linguistic culture transmitted through the usage of Guarani, Jopará, and Slang as the movie characters interact within their social group. So we have a general objective, which is to identify the techniques applied by Netflix and to evaluate their effectiveness based on the sample units taken and analyzed from the movie subtitles. Also, we have some specific objectives that are the following. First of all, to identify the translation techniques used in the movie as well as their frequency of usage. Also, to evaluate the challenges faced by the translators in the process of making the translation of the subtitles. Finally, to analyze the effectiveness to maintain the intended meaning of the original script. Also, we have a general question, which is what techniques did Netflix apply to translate Guarani, Jopara, and Slang into English subtitles for the movie Leal, and how effective were they? We also have some specific questions. One of them is whether the techniques applied were effective or not. I mean, the techniques applied for the subtitles. Also, what were the most recurring techniques applied for the subtitles making? Also, did the techniques applied accurately reflect the cultural connotations transmitted through Guarani, Yopara, and Slang? And as a justification, we can say that the study aims to address academic gaps caused by the scarcity of audiovisual translation involving especially Guarani and Spanish. Another aim is to serve as a vehicle to share the unique traits of the Paraguayan linguistic culture portrayed in this film. Moreover, it seeks to enhance the understanding of the dynamics of media for those interested in the translation field. And then we go with the literature review.
Okay, so in the literature review, we have some key concepts. The first one is the audiovisual translation, also known as AVT. Audiovisual translation is a branch of the translation studies. It deals with multimodal and multimedia texts into another language or cultures. In this part, we have dubbing, voiceovers, and subtitles, among others. We were interested in subtitles, and subtitles can be divided into two categories: intralingual subtitling and interlingual subtitling. Intralingual is for the deaf and hard of hearing people, and interlingual is for foreign films. And this is the one that we are interested in. In interlingual subtitling, the purpose is to approximate translation equivalence. After that, we have Guarani, which is the official language, along with Spanish in Paraguay. And then we have Jopará, which is the mix between Spanish and Jopará. And one of its characteristic is the code switching between Spanish and Guarani. And lastly, we have Slang, which is a very informal language, usually spoken rather than written, and it is used by certain kind of groups of people. Then we have theories of translation. The first theory of translation is the equivalence theory presented by Eugene Nida. In this, he discarded the idea of literal or free translation. Instead, he proposed two main types of equivalence, which is formal equivalence and dynamic equivalence. After that, we have text type presented by Katerina Rees. In this, she suggested that each text type requires a different translation method. Then we have the scope of theory presented by Hansi Vermeer. This is the one that we chose for our research. So it was presented by Hans J. Vermeer in the 1970s, and he said that the translators have to know why a source text is to be translated and what function of the targeted will be. And also, he stated that the translation has to be functionally adequate. And lastly, we had translation-oriented text analysis presented by Christian Nord. In this, he was focusing on how the text is organized at or above the sentence level. Next, we have translation techniques. According to Vina and Darlet, it can be divided into two groups: literal translation and oblique translation. In the literal translation group, we have borrowing, calque, and literal. And in the oblique translation, we have transposition, modulation, equivalence, and adaptation, reduction, compensation, and reformulation. So methodology or type of study is analytical, since we seek to identify patterns as well as themes and meaning through an analysis of non-numeric data. Also, we apply the document analysis, since we were dealing with data to uncover meaning as well as gaining understanding and draw conclusions. And our methodological approach was a qualitative, because we dealt with non-numeric data, words, and meaning. For our data analysis, after collating the data, which were 75 words, we categorized them into Guarani, Jopará, and Slang. Then we wanted to evaluate which technique was used to translate the words and expression, and then we compared the translation to the original word or expression, and then we tried to determine which technique was applied as well as their effectiveness. Here we have examples of the Guarani, since we categorize them. Here we have examples of Guarani. The first word is Ndetabu which was translated as "Are you insane?" In this, we believe that the equivalence technique was applied, since both expressions are employed to refer to someone who is not exercising good judgment. So for that reason, both expressions are equivalent, since both refer to someone that's acting crazy. Then we have the word Shera'a, which was translated as "my friend." We believe that the literal translation technique was used here, since both expressions are used to refer to a friend. So the intended meaning was successfully conveyed here. Next, we have the word yaguarete. And here the translator translated as tiger. We believe that the adaptation technique was used here. Yaguarete in Guarani means jaguar, and the translator translated it as tiger. We believe that this was done because tiger are well known, but also because in one part when the person was speaking Guarani, he referred to the animal as yaguarete. However, when he was speaking in Spanish, he referred to the animal as tigre. So we believe that that's also a reason why the translator chose this word instead of the word jaguar. Next, we have Ivale. The translation was he was killed. In this, the modulation translation technique was used. So we believe that the modulation technique was used because there is a structural modification, there is a linking verb to connect the word he and vale, which is the Guarani word for skilled. There's also a shift in tense from the simple present to the simple past. However, we still believe that the intended meaning was conveyed. Next, we have baetecopio. In this, the translation was hello. The equivalence technique was used here. And in Guarani, bateco is equivalent for how are you. However, it's still used to greet someone. So there are idiomatic equivalents. So the meaning was well conveyed here.
Okay, now we'll go with some examples for slang. For example, the first one will be soplon, which was translated as snitch. We consider this to be a literal translation or an application of the literal translation technique, since both expressions are equal in their meaning, also in the context when they are usually used. For example, they're usually used like, for example, in within crime organizations, when one of the members of the organization provides information to authorities like the police, for example, to reveal what they are doing, etc. So we consider that this translation technique was accurately applied to convey the meaning of the original expression, which is soplon. Then we have the expression tan cachafa, and it was translated in the target language as looking like that. This we consider an example of reduction, even though there are more words in the target language. There are 3 in comparison to the source language. There's an important or relevant omission here, which is the absence of the adjective equivalent for cachafa. Cachafa usually will be referring to someone who is not well dressed, someone who doesn't keep a good appearance, not good looking. How also it might be referring to someone who doesn't behave appropriately or as expected. Therefore, looking like that will be referring to the first case, someone who is not well dressed, for example. So, but there's no exact word that will translate cachafa in the target language. Therefore, we consider as an example of reduction. Therefore, as a result, we consider this technique doesn't help too much to keep the intended meaning in the source language expression. Next, we have legalmente. Let me enlarge it for you to see it better. Legalmente, that was translated as legally. We believe that this is an example of literal translation being applied here. However, it doesn't keep the meaning of the expression quite accurately, since legalmente is usually used by people who are about to say something, to speak seriously about something, or they are telling something that it is true. Legally, however, is used to refer to a series of procedures carried out by lawyers or attorneys usually. So we do not consider that the translation technique was correctly applied in this case to preserve the meaning of the word legalmente. Then we have a discreción and at ease. We consider this an equivalence, example of equivalence technique being applied. A discreción is usually used by military officers to give an order or command to someone else to shift from a strict standing position to a more relaxed position. So we consider this equivalence. Both expressions are used in the same context, and the technique helps to preserve the intended meaning of the expression. Then we'll go with some examples for slang. This is an expression a bit funny. Haceme piecito. This is quite popular probably in our context here in Paraguay. A literal translation was used in this case, in our opinion. However, the technique doesn't help to preserve the intended meaning of the expression haceme piecito. Because if you are watching the movie at the moment, you will see someone trying to climb a tree. This person asked for help to his body to do it. However, when he says do the little feet, probably wouldn't make sense for the English native speaker person who is watching the movie. So he or she wouldn't understand what does this person mean by do the little feet. So we consider that the literal translation was not well applied to preserve the intended meaning. Then we have other examples like locoite and he's crazy. In this case, locoite is a expression used to refer to someone who has like a high percentage of this state of craziness, right? And he's crazy is just a plain statement of that of someone having this condition or disease, however you want to call it. Therefore, we consider this an example of reduction. There's an omission of the intensifier suffix it, which indicates that level of craziness. In the target language, however, even though we have more words in the expression, this is just a plain statement. So the intensity is not present in this translation. However, we still consider that the technique keeps the general idea, probably not the whole nuance of the expression, but still preserves, still manages to communicate the idea of the original expression. Then we have the word chamigo and my friend. We consider this a case of equivalence because both expressions are usually used to refer to someone who is close to us, a buddy, a friend, someone who is loved by us usually. So therefore, we consider this an example of equivalence translation technique being applied, and we consider that it also manages to communicate the intended idea appropriately or effectively. More examples, Jopará. We have these two expressions. The first one is Kembarete es, and the translation is he's strong. We consider this an example of transposition because there's an exclamative expression which is being changed to a more plain expression. Kembarete is exclamative, and it's highlighting this aspect of this person, how strong this person is. He's strong is just stating this characteristic of the person, and also apparently is focusing on the person rather than the characteristic per se. However, despite this difference between the source language and the target language expressions, we still consider this transposition technique was applied well enough to preserve the intended meaning. Then we have the expression "do falta la yagua Carrera jape," that was translated as "let's pretend the coast is clear." it's evident that translating the expression literally will make it impossible to understand for the especially the English native speaking audience. Therefore, we consider that the translators resorted to an equivalence or to apply the equivalence technique here to preserve the general idea, the general expression, or the general meaning of the expressions that we consider that still communicate, in other words, the idea of the original expression. Then finally, another example of Jopará is the expression Catupuru era mi abuelo, that is translated as he was a wise man. Catupuru is an Guarani expression that can be translated as a wise, and era mi abuelo was my grandfather. We consider this an example of modulation because there's a modification in the focus of the word, or what is the main word. Here, for example, we have a passive voice. This is an active voice sentence. So therefore, here the focus is on the aspect of the characteristic of the person, how wise the grandfather was. Here is focusing on the person rather than focusing on the characteristics. So that's why we consider it is an expression, is an example of application, of modulation being applied here. However, the intended meaning in general still underlines or still preserves the meaning of the expression. And after this, we have, we continue with the data results.
Okay, so the following table represents the frequency of the usage of the translation techniques. In this, we can see that the equivalence technique was mostly used. And for example, for the equivalence technique, we have 33 words that were translated with this. Then we have the modulation, which was the second most used. For modulation, 16 words were translated with this technique. 10 words were translated with reduction. 7 words were translated with the literal translation technique. And with adaptation, 3 words. And then we have transposition, 3 words. Reformulation, 2 words. Expansion, 1 word. And borrowing, 1 word as well. Then we have the percentage representation. As we can see as well there, the equivalence technique was mostly used, applied. So in this, we can see that we can see a translator's attempt to reproduce idiomatic and colloquial meaning through similar English expressions rather than just translate them literally.
Okay, some conclusions that we can mention are based on this study are that the study allowed to identify the specific translation techniques applied and their degree of effectiveness. Also, we can say that functional translation and idiomatic equivalence were the priority over literal translation through the constant usage of equivalence and modulation, as Luján just mentioned. Also, we can say that subtitles keep a balance between functionality and fidelity to communicate ideas faithfully. Some recommendations that we can make for further study or for future study regarding a similar topic will be that, for example, focusing on research on Paraguayan production is relevant or will be relevant to understand Paraguayan bilingual dynamics of our linguistic culture. Also, specializing in bilingual and diglossic linguistic context for those who work in audiovisual translation of Paraguayan production will be relevant in order to acquire better results or be more effective at the moment of studying these kind of dynamics. Finally, diving into the world of translation of Paraguayan audiovisual or literary work will lead to appreciate the uniqueness of Guarani and Jopará as traits of our identity as Paraguayans.
Okay, so here we have a general bibliography. These are some of the works or research data that we could find, and then we have a specific bibliography as well, which is next. And here we have a more specific bibliography that we mentioned in our work, which were really helpful for our research to, be what it is now. And to finish, we have a quote made by Anthony Burgess, which says, "Translation is not a matter of words only; it is a matter of making intelligible a whole culture." And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for listening. You are muted, Professor Carvalho.
Start barking. This is what I said. Congratulations. Now we're going to go into the stage of asking a question. Do you have any question to ask, Cynthia?
Thank you, Professor Carvalho. Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate you, Luján and Joel, for your work. And also, I would like to make a comment about representation. Representation matters when we see these kind of papers that show something so unique from this region, not just Paraguay, but like other countries around also share Guarani with us. It's very important, and even though this is something small, you can make it grow, or other people can make it grow. So that is very important. So I just would like to know what was your main motivation to choose this specific film and not any other.
Well, in my case, well, as I mean, we can. I think we share with Lujan this opinion. Of course, there might be some different movies that will be like a good fit for our study. But for example, one of the most famous movies that were already chosen was Siete Cajas. There are already some studies about Siete Cajas, but sadly, we don't have many movies that are available on streaming platforms, especially like Netflix. So Siete Cajas is one of them, and this is another of those few movies that we have available. Actually, now that we are speaking, and there's a second, Leal, a second movie of Leal. I don't remember the whole name because they changed it,
It's
but
just
it's
Leal
still
too, or
called
something like
Leal.
that.
Yeah, Comando Yaguarete, I think.
Uh-huh.
Yes, but it is not, for example, available on Netflix. So if we wanted to study a movie that is not only available for Paraguayan viewers or countries around around ours, and also available the whole world, we didn't have many options, sadly. So that was one of the motivations and reasons why we chose this movie.
Yeah, and also it was interesting to see that it had subtitles in English. So we wanted to see how it went. Did they translate? It's interesting because Guarani, you don't really see subtitles in English. Like from Guarani to English, or it's not really that common. So I think that it was really interesting. It was a really interesting topic. So we enjoyed it very much, and it was really interesting.
And what
Romina, do
about
you have a
the
question?
process of selecting uh, what words you're going to include in your corpus?
Well, we wanted to add the words that we believe that convey the meaning, like successfully, and the others that were not that really, as as like is the case of legally and legalmente, for example, as well as jaguarete and tiger. So that's like we wanted to see which present the ones that this was okay, and no, this is not really, like haceme piecito, for example. So we wanted to make a contrast between the ones that were actually well translated or conveyed the meaning successfully, and the others that not so much.
Also, as we mentioned during the presentation, we also try to choose words uh, that the idea were to, where we can see aspects of our culture and our linguistic features, like haceme piecito, for example, probably, I mean, as far as I know, there's no, haceme piecito is not used in other countries. I've lived in Argentina, for example, for 3 years. I've never heard haceme piecito, for example. So we wanted to look for words that will help us to see a unique characteristic of our linguistic culture. And that was another reason why we chose these words. And that's why also in first instance, we made that those categories, slang, Guarani, and Jopará.
Thank you very much. I have no further question.
Romina, you have a question? I think you're silent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't find a way to unmute my microphone. There were some of those expressions that weren't very successful in translation. If you had the chance to improve this translation or the subtitles, how would you make it to convey more meaning? The case of haceme piecito or the case of cachafa, for instance, because cachafa is not only, it doesn't only relate to the way you look, but it means something more. So those
Behavior.
little, things that make Jopará or Guarani so meaningful to Paraguayans, that it sometimes is hard to translate or to explain to a foreigner who hasn't been part of it. Sure. How would you improve that part?
Well, in my case, for example, we try to find information about how Netflix works regarding their translation, and what we were able to find was that they mainly resort to human resources right away, so they don't rely on machine translation that much. Um, so, and we know that they face challenges like space and time, so they have to do it as short as possible. So, and but also, I mean, in within a time frame, so the people can read it and
Mhm.
fast enough. But probably I will, in my case, if I had some trouble translating expressions like do the little feet, I mean, haceme piecito or cachafa, I will probably try to go further and consult with people who are, for example, from Paraguay. If I were a translator for Netflix and I have to face with that situation, right? So I will probably focus on some specific expressions or words that I find them more difficult. So I will try to contact someone, or that's why we also mentioned, for example, specialized training in Guarani at some point as a recommendation, because we understand that they need help probably. We don't know how much they resort to help or specialized help for these cases, but one of my suggestions or one of the things that I would try to do is to consult people who can help me to translate these subtitles more effectively to reach the audience.
Yeah. For the one that it was Haceme Piecito, we actually gave we suggested a
Suggestion.
word which was to give a leg up. So maybe that one I mean, we would have used that word in for Haceme Piecito. And also, as Jose said we subtitles, when you're making subtitles, you have to have into consideration many constraints like time. You have to have only two lines, so you don't have really a lot of room in the screen, to make all this, because maybe there is a word, there is this rephrasing and expansion in which when you're writing and in translation you can actually explain what the word is. For example, tereré, and which is a drink, and so you cannot do that in subtitling. So as Joel said, maybe just get, because for us Paraguayans some words can be kind of tricky, because we may know what it means, but how do we explain what it is? How do we find the right words? So, and yes, training and speaking with other people and get what their insights are regarding the language and the culture. Um, so yeah.
Thank you, guys. Mr. Carvalho?
Yes, certainly the time and space constraints are a difficulty to be
Mm,
overcome by translators, because
yeah.
they have to follow the dialogue and they can't just expand, as you say. How would you translate tereré? How can you explain that in the time that you're
Yeah.
giving? Dame un poco de tu tereré, for example. How would you translate that? Yeah. You can't say, you have to use the original language, the original
Yeah.
word. I have a question. Well, do you believe the English subtitles preserve the cultural identity of the original dialogue, or do they tend to neutralize it for international audiences? Yeah, because I think our
I-
particular
In mhm.
Guarani cultural traits are really unique in a way. Yeah, unique to our race, unique to our people. So what
In
do you
my
think that's?
opinion, in my opinion, for example, well, first you mentioned about neutralizing. I don't think they were trying to neutralizing it. I think they tried to do it as good as possible. The challenges are obvious. I mean, we can see those challenges if we study the script and the original script and the subtitles provided by them. And I will give. I mean, me as a Paraguayan is speaking person, and also someone who consider myself being able to understand and speak Guarani relatively good well. I can say that they managed to preserve in a good percentage the traits and the
Mhm.
uniqueness of our culture through our linguistic culture, by the way. So probably they could have done it better, of course. But I would say that as a Paraguayan who can understand the script, I will be satisfied with the job that they perform with the
Mm.
subtitles of this movie. I mean, overall, I would say that will be the word for me, satisfied.
Yeah. Overall, it was really good. There were some parts that we were like, okay, this is confusing, some words and stuff. But overall, the translations were really good. They You laughed when you have to laugh, and you kind of are, oh my gosh, this is happening here when you are reading. So it kind of, fulfilled its what it had to do. So you enjoy the movie, you understand, and yeah, some parts, yeah, some words, not just like some, not parts but words, but that just is not that big of a deal, because overall you could get the main idea, and the main idea of the movie and our culture, and what they wanted to convey through the movie and the subtitles. So it was
Mhm.
it was a re- it was really good.
Are you familiar with Siete Cajas? And Siete Cajas
Yes.
was
Yes,
Yes,
by far, I
there
think,
is.
is the most famous Paraguayan movie
Yes.
so far.
so far, yeah.
There is a
Okay.
thesis presentation that's based on the Siete Cajas, but they base their subtitles from the DVD,
Mhm.
So they also analyze the subtitles from a DVD. But that's kind of
Mm.
the difference between our work and their work, because they were talking about also translation techniques, and but from a DVD, and ours from the platform that's Netflix.
Yes,
Yeah.
as far as I know, Siete Cajas is the movie that has stayed in the cinema the longest so far, like for months. I don't know, even for a year maybe, but I know that it has been available at the cinema for months. So yeah, indeed,
Yeah.
it's the most famous movie so far.
Yeah, but now it's not on any platform that I know of, at
No.
least.
Mhm. Yeah, that's right. Well, that's as far as I'm concerned. This is all I have for questions. So, if you don't have any further questions, we can just ask Lujan and Joel to abandon the room for a while,
Okay,
and we'll so we can deliberate with
Yeah.
my colleagues. Yeah,
okay.
Okay. Okay. Bye then.
we'll ask you to come back, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, Joel and Lujan. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank
Well, after a harsh discussion, we we have decided that you really you've really done a good job, and so you deserve a 5. Yes.
Thank you very
Uh,
much.
con
you. Thank
Congratulations.
you
Well,
very much,
congratulations.
Professor.
And
Thank you very
now
much.
we
Really
are all
appreciate it.
colleagues. I think you're not um, from the topic you have chosen. I guess you're not following the teaching path. No, you're following the
Mm-hmm.
translation path. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Good luck with that. There's a lot of now they have the competition of the artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Well,
Apart
yeah.
from all the other competitors that we usually have. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much,
Really appreciate
professors.
it.
We really appreciate it. Thank you
Very
so
happy
much.
about this.
Felicidades,
Well,
licenciados. We're proud to call you our colleagues.
Thank you,
yes.
Professor.
Y la próxima que
Congratulations,
nos encontremos
licenciada
podemos,
Recalde. Oh,
Oh my
ir por
gosh.
esos
congratulations,
vocalitos.
licenciada Recalde, and congratulations, licenciado el Coronel.
Licenciada.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Ovelar.
much.
Can we pose for a picture? I've been
Yeah,
taking lots of pictures. I'm
absolutely.
going to share them
Yes.
in a bit,
A
but like
picture.
one where we
Yeah.
pose.
Hang
Okay,
on,
so
so that they don't shine.
Yeah.
and then one more all smiley with your cover slides. Okay, so 3,
Oh, okay.
2,
Cover
3.
slide.
Then 3, 2, 1. Okay, I've got this one.
Okay.
Okay, just one more with your cover slide, and
Yeah,
then
let me
you'll be
share.
free to go celebrate.
For the official records. You can
Yeah.
go and drink
Very
champagne, your
good.
Make a toast.
Okay,
Is it
so
visible?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
very
Okay.
well.
yes. So I'm going to take 2 pictures. So 3, 2,
Yeah.
1. Okay, so I have one. So please wait a second, because I'm taking
Okay.
2 kinds of pictures. Okay, so now the standard view. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Done.
Good.
Thank
Yes.
you. Would you share those pictures in the group, please?
Oh yes, all of them. I've got plenty of pictures. Like, yeah, at least
Good.
25 or 20 pictures.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So,
Is the recording going to be uploaded as well?
I think they uploaded to YouTube, to a channel.
Yes,
on YouTube.
I need to
We are
share
in-
the app, to share it with Mr.
Okay.
Christoffel, and he will work with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Okay.
now you'll be
Well,
on for posterity.
now you can go out and celebrate with that.
yeah.
That,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
It's
The
very well
toast
deserved.
we didn't have, but maybe next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a great night.
A great rest of the
both
evening, guys.
you.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
And I'll
you
see you
too,
around,
Professor.
colleagues.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
See
very
you
much.
around.
Thank you
Congratulations.
all.
Good night.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.